every second and fourth Monday, 8 to 10 p.m. PSU Speaks. Don't you miss it.
Power rules the world today. Power corrupts, they say. And absolute power corrupts you. Absolutely. It can change a man who has a heart of gold, make him cruel, wicked, self-centered and cold. Many men in this land, many organizations fought for freedom and justice throughout the land. When they have power and authority, they don't give a damn about nobody. Prostituting the island to all and sundry, they peddling my people's right, exploiting, oppressing, less freedom, more suffering. I wonder how we survive. Think it over, my friend. Think it over again. Think it over, don't vex with me, shorty. Think it over, I'm singing as I sing. Food we can't even buy, murder the price too high. Malnutrition killing the children while we the adults starving. Yet the price is rising without control. Young man begging bread by the side of the road. And chamber of commerce in this land, I tell you, they don't give one damn. The more we try to economize, the more cost of living rise. When they have power and authority, they don't give a damn about nobody. They prostituting the island, milking the land dry. They making my people starve, exploiting, oppressing, less freedom, more suffering. This thing just can't go on. Think it over, my friend. Think it over, carefully again. Think it over, don't vex with me, shorty. Think it over, I'm singing as I sing. Work we can't even find. Life seems a waste of time. Nothing to do but sit around the corner line. So frustrated, some would rather starve than beg. Others turn to crime and steal what they can get. And the judges have no sympathy, they're hammering everyone that they catch. Even little children are jailed without regret. When they have power and authority, they don't give a damn about you or me. I want to do lock me up when they catch me, smoking little tampy while the social rich are freed, exploiting, oppressing, less freedom, more suffering. A poor man's life is really hard indeed. Think it over, my friend. Think it over, carefully again. Do it again. Think it over, don't vex with me.
Good evening, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and all our listeners in the diaspora. I am Desvita, your moderator here for another PSU Speaks program, and I would like to welcome you, yes, for another interesting discussion tonight. In studio, I have with me our esteemed president who stepped out for a bit, and our general secretary. So I would like to ask our GS to introduce herself until our president gets back.
Good night. Good night, our listeners, our members. It's always a pleasure for me to be here to address the issues affecting workers. I know it is quite cold and rainy outside, and I hope that you, not only that you're logged on, but you would have invited a friend to log on to hear what we have to say. and also that you would call us. We know a lot of persons would listen, they would meet you from ever so often and say, well, I listen to your program, but we want you to call and interact with us. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know how we can better serve you as a union. So I'm hoping that you would call in and have that discussion with us. So all the best, and let's hear what tonight's program brings us.
Okay, I will now ask our president to introduce himself and give his welcome as well.
Good night, listeners of Nice Radio. Feel like it has been a long time. I don't know when last we were here, but um, it's good to be back again. I think we missed the last program because of circumstances. So good night to all our members. Good night to workers in the country and all the persons who are listening to us, who would be listening to us tonight. Are you joining now or are you joining later on Facebook or on radio? Tonight's topic is a very important one that affects every single Vincentian, and hopefully we can do justice to it. Hopefully you can contribute to the discussion as we look at the issues and suggest possible solutions to fix some of the challenges that as working class people we are faced with.
Okay, thank you, my esteemed panelists, for tonight. I would like to extend a special welcome to our members and workers throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Before we get into the topic of discussion tonight, I would like to share with you a scripture reading, and it's taken from Ecclesiastes 2, verses 24 to 25. And it says, "There is nothing better for a person that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment?" So tonight we will be discussing a very interesting topic, and it's cost of living and its impacts on workers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we would also be looking at suggestions and solutions. So first of all, let us begin our discussion by examining what exactly do we mean when we say cost of living, and what are the different tenets surrounding the subject of cost of living. So according to Investopedia, cost of living is the amount of money needed to sustain a certain standard of living by affording expenses such as housing, food, taxes, and healthcare. So basically, that's a simple definition of what cost of living is. So we have been seeing some rise in prices for some time now. And of course, we know that we have recently received a salary increase, as well as we saw an increase in the minimum wage. However, these increases still cannot seem to meet the cost of the basic items that we pick up at the supermarket that we need to survive, and what we need to take care of our families. So we are looking at what it takes for us when we go to the supermarket, or otherwise it could be healthcare, it could be other services, transportation that we would do on a day-to-day basis, but yet our income cannot meet our expenses. So basically, that's an overview. That's my opinion, that is, of what cost of living really entails. So our discussion would be focused around that particular idea. are we meeting, or how are we supporting the needs of our families on a daily basis? So if anyone wants to get into the discussion.
Well, I always give the. So when you have so many ladies, it's always good to listen to the ladies speak first.
Okay, well, we have we have our young worker with us, and of course, cost of living is not something that is just prone to, older people in our society. Even though we have persons who might not have a family, they still incur the same difficulties that persons who are more mature, like, in the working environment, of course, would experience when they go to the supermarket as well. So I don't know if Nayoka could share a young worker's perspective on, cost of living in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Hi, good night to everyone. It's wonderful being with you guys again. So just to answer your question, I think we can all agree that the cost of living is too high. I mean, I guess it wouldn't have been too bad, if our salaries were able to, I guess, balance that in a sense, right? But it's not. So from a young worker's perspective, I think the government can do better. Okay, not just with inflation rates, but also our salaries. What do you think, especially minimum wage?
Yeah, I see.
Seeing as how most young workers are called, well, would be referred to as junior staff, so they get paid minimum wage, and it's not a lot. What is it, like $1,300, $1,500?
Okay, I guess that's where you would start in the public service. I mean, when you look at it sometimes, when compared to other persons, other working young persons who might not be getting that as a minimum when they start out working based on the category of worker you are. Yes, it might be a bit challenging or even more challenging for persons, especially when you look at persons who might be on the YES program per se
All right.
and have a family, because that is happening, and it have persons who have families, yes, who would be on the set programs as well, which all depends on the level of education that you would have acquired.
I agree.
So everyone is feeling the pinch. And I mean, nobody could run away that inflation has gone up, especially since COVID and the war in Ukraine and all of these things that affect us around the world. So we cannot run away from it. But yes, there are ways in which our government could mitigate or even try to, take off some of that burden or stress off of Vincentians. So basically, our discussion would be surrounding that. How does cost of living impact not just workers or Vincentians, unemployed, the employed? So basically, yes, that's where we're going to start off our discussion tonight. So, Sister Shellyan, I'm not sure if you want to say anything, your views.
Just to say, well, for now, I am in agreement with everybody that it's a burning issue, it's a challenge, and more so for the persons who are at the lower scale, which is in the government service from the majority
Definitely.
of persons, and those are the ones who really feeling the pinch. I mean, all of us, but more so for those who have less salary coming in. I was listening to the PM. I think he was in Europe, I think, some couple of days ago or a week ago, and he was giving us remark. He was bringing remark, and he was talking about the high unemployment rate and all of that. And I said, but I mean, I am not sure if PM should really be saying that. I mean, we all know it's a fact, but he was talking about persons not not working, and if you're not working, we know all of that in terms of if the unemployment rate is high. And then I guess we would discuss this at a later date, at a later time in the program, when we speak about what can be done in terms of mitigating or helping persons to live better standard of life when they retire. I'm sure the NIS factor will come in for those two persons who are at the lower scale, and those persons in the private sector who may not have any sort of big set of pension coming in. And when we talk about what can be done to help us to live a more comfortable life, because we hear, okay, when you start to work, you start to prepare, you should start to prepare for retirement. But I think retirement is very scary to look at right now when we look at the way things are and the prices for not only goods, the prices for other amenities that we need, housing in terms of if you're mortgage or renting, wherever it is holistic. It's not just food. And what I want us to realize is not just to say, okay, cost of living is high, is the implication it has, because persons will more want to buy the things that they can afford. And the things that they can afford may be the things that are not so healthy for them. Because we all hear about the burden of the non-communicable diseases and what can be done. And you hear you should buy this and you should buy that. But if the government is really to look at how this cost of living and the high cost of living can really bring burden on us to take care of persons when they can't buy the food that they need, and they can't buy the medication that they need, and they can't do this and they can't do that, it becomes the burden of the state. So it's like one thing leading into the next, and not just to look at it to say, okay, well, cost of living is high, but the implication it has for the persons who are at the lower end of the spectrum.
Definitely. So I'm not sure what the president is going to.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to ask it. You see, how do we really know? I mean, you're talking about cost of living being high. What is the evidence that we have of that? How do we really know that? You know, everybody had this cry song. You've been hearing it for years. Oh, cost of living high. How do we know that is the case? What evidence do we have that cost of living is high? And what evidence do we have that it is high for everybody? Are we just talking because everybody's talking also? See, and those to me are some of the issues, core issues that you have to address. Everything has to be evidence-based, right? So it is not just to say that it is high. What is the evidence that demonstrates that? One, and how do we arrive at that? I think that's perhaps where you need to address the conversation initially, to present the facts. Here's what is happening. Here's why you have arrived at the conclusion that cost of living is high. The other thing is, people hear about cost of living. How is it measured here anyway? What is related to it? And how in St. Vincent, what evidence is there in St. Vincent that would point us to that particular picture of what is happening in the economy that people are really talking about? I think the listeners need to have an appreciation of that type of information in order to, and I'm sure that the listeners themselves can present some evidence because they may have experience. People peculiar with their shopping. I mean, it may not be like me who just go and I need something to go and get it. Maybe now you come and say, nah, last week that was the, and this week. So, I think that's what needs to be put on the table.
Okay, right. So when we talk about measurements in respect of our cost of living, right? There are two things that persons always point to. One is inflation, the other one is the consumer price index, right? So those are two things that persons will normally refer to as a measurement of in respect of what our standard of living is, what our purchasing power within the country is. So if we can probably bring some understanding of what those two things are, what those things mean, and how are they measured, I guess we can provide some foundation as to where and what you should be looking out for when we speak about cost of living in St. Vincent. So
Inflation.
yes, so we're gonna have a brief discussion
Okay.
on inflation. Should I take this call first or
Yes,
should
Yeah,
I?
Hammer.
definitely.
Oh, shit.
Definitely. What's
Okay.
Yeah, that's my friend Hammer.
I'm not seeing
I'm
this
sure
on,
it's.
though.
Oh, it's still happening.
okay? So,
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, good evening. PSU speak. Hello. Okay, I'm not getting anything. These are not even. Okay, I guess we'll have to sort this out after.
okay.
Mhm.
So, for the listeners' benefit, inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services rises, leading to a decrease in purchasing power. So, in simpler terms, as inflation increases, each unit of currency buys fewer goods and services than it did before. When we're talking about um, measurement, okay, it is commonly measured by the Consumer Price Index, which is a CPI, or the Producer Price Index, which is a PPI. The CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, tracks the price changes of a basket of consumer goods and services, while the PPI, which is the Producer Price Index, measures price changes from the perspective of the seller. Okay, just so we understand clearly.
So just you're gonna take the call or
It's not on, so I don't know what's going on.
okay. Technical
Yeah.
Yes, so
difficulties.
we,
Just to
so caller, give us a minute, please. We're trying to sort out.
to add to that in terms of the measurements and basket, but not only basket of goods, but and services as well, because there are those basic services that we need, health, education, and otherwise,
Oh, yes.
and the responsibility of the government, most of the stats department, Bureau of Standards, and the other departments that are responsible for putting these figures together so they can see. So the I was looking at the information between 2012 and 2024 and how some of the services and goods would have increased over the years, most of education, things like health, rent, and so forth. So you can clearly see, if you're looking at it from a graphic standpoint, as they have them on the site, you can clearly see those increases over the years between 2012 and 2024. And if you really have to look at it in relation to the salaries that especially the lower scale persons have, and the little bit that we would have received, the 2% and the 2.5 and so forth, you know definitely clearly that you will not be able to buy or to purchase the things that you need or the services that you may need. So the evidence is there in terms of the figures and how it has increased over the years. And if you look at it in relation to our salaries, as we are some of the lowest paid in the OECS, you know, if this trend continues, that after a while we will not be able to afford the basic things that we need, because the basket of goods is the basic things that we need: the flour, the rice, etc., etc. These are the basic things that people need to survive on a day-to-day basis. And if the CPI is saying, okay, you've had this amount of percentage increase and you don't have the finance to match it, there's no way that we would be able to afford the basic basket of goods and the services that we need over the next couple of years. I mean, even if we get the 2.5 in January, because you can see it month by month, the increases and the increases and the decreases, the decrease based on the type of goods. So the information is there. And you know the salaries that persons receive, and the majority of persons being, and Brother Boucher asked an important question in terms of if it's really across the board. And I'm not going to say it is across the board, because there's a small bracket, even though it might be the smallest bracket, those persons who are doing quite well in terms of where their salaries are and their allowances and so forth, that have them at a certain level, and they really don't feel the pressure, even though VAT is 16% and the other tax increases. They won't really feel it that much because they're at the higher, even though they might be the smaller bracket. They're at the point where they may not feel the pinch of the poor man, who is the one who got the lowest, or not getting any money at all, but still have to face the supermarket. You might be getting little or none, but you still have to face the supermarket, and you still have to face Vilnec, and you still have to face the other service organization, even though you're getting little or not. So it is really not, in my view, across the board that everybody's feeling the same pinch.
Precisely, because your basket might be different than my basket.
Exactly. My basket of goods is the basic that I can afford. The rice, the chicken, the salt, the basic that you need, okay, for just cook a meal. While others, the basket of goods doesn't look the same. So the basket of goods really cannot be compared to say all of us feeling the same pinch. And that is what really should be taken into consideration when governments are looking for giving reliefs and giving, what's the word? Easing the pressure. What's the word I want? Right. Basically giving persons a relief from the goods and services that the poor class need. Look into that.
Yes,
and not so much looking to see how you can relieve those who really don't need it.
Right. And a funny thing too, what might have been the basic goods in that basket 5 years ago,
It
is
definitely
not
not
the same
now.
basic goods in that basket this year, right? Because when we look at
I know it's less.
right, things like fish that was readily available to persons, they could have gone by the fish market and they beg a fisherman, give me $5, da da da.
No, it's different now.
So the pocket is the reach of your pocket is
Because
totally different.
even though you might want to say, right, okay, you might buy the same thing, but it's the amount that you can afford to
Exactly.
buy.
So I might be
You could
5 years
probably
ago,
only
my
afford to buy
salary
one
might
pound.
have been covering the expenses for my family.
Mhm.
But now I had to cut back so much. Some of these things that was so simple or so ordinary or something that's so readily available 5 years ago now. Those are things that are now luxury stuff, luxury goods, like luxury items. That and you just said about encouraging persons to eat healthy, to live a healthy lifestyle. We cannot. It is so hard, so difficult to do that now, right? So these are some of the impacts that the cost of living actually the spill off of it that persons are not really aware of or probably not too conscious of, if I couldn't, there's a better word to use. So I know our president did a bit of in-depth
Yeah, but no,
research, right?
I'm just, you know.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
say something before you.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
just,
So
I noticed
our-
on his list have well right banana not even in how to even say where it is.
no, I just
I
look
mean,
at
so-
Maybe
yeah,
no,
some of them where the prices have yes.
I
would
mean,
have
because
changed. Even
if
even on a month-to-month basis, you can actually see the increase between from one month to the next.
yes, because
And that is significant to
I
note.
myself a, well, I could say a couple of months ago, I when I went into the vegetable market and I could have picked up simple things like ginger, cucumber, lettuce, these sort of things for $2, and then it went to a $5. Now it's a $10,
Yeah.
and that is within months,
crazy. Even it's
right? And we yes want to the Ministry of Health. Yes, they are promoting living and eating healthy, but it is so difficult now to do that.
But I think to that is just my opinion. I really don't have the proof, but I think a lot of those persons who sell these produce, um, I know they hide behind, oh, everything is expensive, this gone up, that gone up, and everybody's saying everything this gone up, that gone up. But who is really keeping track? I heard the government mentioned the intention. I don't know if it was done to do better price control and all of that.
Well, we're gonna look at that
So
later on in the program.
right,
So that
so
would be
let me not
something
jump
to
the gun.
discuss.
So let's
Yeah.
hope that is the case and people are not just allowed to do what they want, how they want. So okay, so we leave that for when we when we actually get there. But it is something for us to look at, and it's not just persons in the government service. It's not just well, the upper class persons not really feeling it, but the middle class and the lower. Well, even if you have middle class anymore, but you know maybe on paper, um, those that actually feeling it to realize the significance of the issue, to really look at it that we have the percentage have changed even from a month to month basis over the years. There are a number of goods that have gone up significantly if you look at the figures. And if it is to continue this trend, what is going to happen to us in the next two, well, I even want to stretch it to 10 years, in the next 5, 10, 2 or 5 years, we probably will not be able to feed ourselves, and that in itself would bring um more issues. And even if for those persons who have just received the the increase in the minimum wage, it's not even significant when you look at the figures for the increases for goods. Even though we welcome it,
Okay, I'm gonna
can it
try.
compensate?
I have a caller coming in here on WhatsApp. Let me try and see if I could get this one in. Good evening, PSU Speaks.
Good evening, my sisters. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. Welcome to PSU
I don't
Speaks.
know what happened. I try on the other landline to get in, and all of a sudden everything went dead. My sister, let me tell you something, right? I don't want no trouble with you all. I've given you all support. You all have to respect me. I've given you more support than any other person to the unions. I call the unions every day. I call the police welfare. In fact, I want to thank the welfare officer, for the head of the welfare, Mr. Prescott. He has been very, courteous to me because he understands that and he is maybe the only one that treat me with the courtesy that I deserve. Why is it that, we're talking like, inflation, cost of living, when you're not telling the public, why is it that we're in this? We had
Okay,
an
we're
economy.
gonna get to
We-
that though. Yeah.
we,
But
we
yes,
had
go
an
ahead.
we had an economy. We had a very vibrant economy under Milton Cato, and it was better under the Annie Eustace, James Mitchell, administration. We lived well. But it is not like if, they had something that happened in the world and everything is that St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica, they're getting salaries. Just recently, Dominica paid about 13%. And one of the good things about that, they didn't pay people who were making over 5,000, And, I'm very happy for, Mrs. Carrot. I didn't expect that from him. Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia, most of the Caribbean countries, we see double bubble, we see, bonuses, we see increases of salary, we see, making the step to help to alleviate cost of living. I
Yes.
have done a survey. The civil servants are suffering. They give them a little $15, because 1.5%. They take it back with all things. And I'm saying is that it must stop. And
Yes.
you all must not come and say, well, until we are there already. Right now, when you look at St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica, just look at those. They have done things to relate to cut down on the very burden that we are having from wars across the world. You have the Hamas Israel war. That has brought a strain. The war in Ukraine, that has brought a strain. Then the Houthis literally attacking ships, that has brought a strain. But the other countries have done something. Not here, because why? We have a bankrupt treasury. We have a bankrupt administration as a bankrupt our economy. And so here, before come off, why it is not, why they're not concerned. Mr. Gonsalves gets 164,000 of our monies. The Governor General 130,000 of our monies. I mean, are we for real? The Speaker 90-something thousand, and so much contracts for people who go on radio to play communists, and yet our hard-working civil servants are not. What is really the role of the union? What are you doing? Are you only going to talk away 25, 50 years of our life? Your role is that you have to say, like you said under the other, you said, enough is enough. We want fresh elections. We want our people to live, not just those who support ULP, because even to get a job, you have to now bow down to Mr. Gonsalves. What is the role of the union for you to come and entertain us and block out callers like me who are courageous? How many persons call in your radio program? You're keeping us back. Why? It's time it stop. I want you all to resign.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
How about you have spoken well, and I have to say you have spoken well, except for the last piece, of course. You kind of like digress a little bit there, but you have analyzed partially or more so the economic situation that we have been faced with for a number of years, and maybe that's an important conversation that you have started, and one that is really going to contribute to the discussion tonight, because that the economy has a lot to do with what is happening. But you have also raised the point, an important one also, that this issue with the Ukraine war and all of the world events that have been taking place, the supply chain issues, COVID, coming out of COVID, a lot of economies are still reeling and trying to recover from those impacts, right? But there are many who have already recovered to the extent that they are granting double bubble. Antigua is one of those countries that is granting an extra month salary in December, right? St. Kitts have not done that. This is the first time But you have mentioned Dominica, so let's take your evidence on that. That is also the case. So the economy has a key role to play in all of it. Now, what are the unions supposed to do? One of the role of the union is to inform not just its members, the working
Public.
class of the country. You see, and that is one of the reasons why this topic is under discussion tonight, because our duty as a union is to bring information to workers, to people in the country, those who are affected by the social and economic issues. So you make people aware of what is happening. And when you have knowledge and information, you can make informed decisions. Now, that is an important function that we are performing at this stage. Our role also is to advocate for increased benefits for our members to mitigate these sort of circumstances where there's high cost of living, particularly to the vulnerable, the low income, the middle class, etc. Our role is to advocate for greater benefits. And that really should happen through collective bargaining as is obtained in all of the OECS and in most countries. However, that does not occur in this democracy. And that issue of collective bargaining as a means, an instrument through which you can mitigate, and during this program, as you go down, we'll see that is one of the means through which unions can address these issues that relates to high cost of living brought on by high inflation, because inflation and cost of living is not one and the same. Okay, because the cost of living would speak specifically to your ability to pay a light bill, the ability to go buy a pound of chicken back, or continue to buy 10 pounds of lead quartz when the price have gone up and keep climbing since 2-3 years ago and ain't going back down. You know, those are important issues that, of course, we have to address. And you speaking about it have shed some light, some even brighter light, for us to clearly see and for the public to see what is happening, what is affecting us.
Okay, we have another caller. Let me see if I could get this person in. Okay. Yes, I lost that person. Okay.
So recently, I happened to be in a supermarket, and this is an example. When you trying to get the call, go ahead, try to get the call. You can try and get the call while I'm speaking, because I don't know if you might get the call. I happened to be in a supermarket, and somebody came in.
Hello, good evening, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. PSU Speaks. Welcome.
One, I've been listening. One thing I would like to clear up is the role of trade unions in all this conversation. What is the role that trade unions need to play to make sure that all this, what you're saying, what is good stuff, actually happens? I'll listen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for calling.
Yes, I was in a supermarket, and I find it quite shocking. A gentleman came in to buy, I think we were at Curry's Mini Mart. He was buying a pound of chicken wing. And when they weighed the chicken wing and tell him the price, I saw the look on his face. And he said, I can't afford that. Could you just give me three pieces? And from the pound, they start taking away and weighing until he could afford what was on this scale. And I said, gentlemen, you buying, this is what you're going to feed yourself with, right? Now, we have seen the shift in prices for basic items like chicken wing moving for the past couple of years. Those prices have been increasing all the time and still increasing. I mean, the comparison that I've pulled up is just between last month or last year and this year in some instance, and in some instance between August and September, and you're seeing the shift in prices. I used to go and buy ripe bananas. I mean, I was stunned when they tell me the new price. I'm like, when does this happen? And we grow bananas, we don't import it. And we get the impression that the goods that are imported, because the majority of our food items are imported, and therefore we expect that the majority of our food prices are going to be impacted by what is happening on the world stage, the supply chain issues because of the Ukraine war, the Ukraine and Russia war, what did happen with COVID. And it seems that when the prices skyrocketed, even during the COVID period, they never came back down. And when that problem was resolved, you expected some of the prices to have fallen, but that didn't happen. That itself presents a problem. Let me give you an example, not in St. Vincent, in the United States. The United States economy is one of the strongest economies in the world and has recovered the fastest. Inflation is around 2%, controlled by the Federal Reserve and their interest rates. But if you notice in the elections, one of the key issues affecting the majority of voters that made them make a decision to vote a particular way, and in this case against the Biden administration, was because of the high prices. Now, the Biden administration did an exceptional job to get the economy functioning the way it did. But the prices are quite sticky. They just ain't moving. Like our PM, Kamala, said she was going to look at introducing laws to the price control, to laws against price gouging. But the economy is good. And even there, you notice that the people were so affected by the high prices that they couldn't care less when you tell me that the economy is growing well and it's the strongest thing in the world and that sort of stuff. It's how it made me feel going to the supermarket, telling us instantly that things are good. Tell the gentleman who go and had to buy 2 pieces of chicken wing, the economy growing at 5% this year as predicted by IMF. That I mean unto him. 5% growth may mean something to one of the ministers of our government, or Mr. Edmund Jackson, who is the over at finance. That may mean something to him. It's not going to mean anything to the man who is experiencing these increases in prices that seem to be astronomical, and they cannot, for whatever, mitigate it. It's not just public servants. It is every person in the country who has to go to the supermarket, every single Vincentian, feeling the impact of what is happening. And at some point, I will get to possible solutions. But every Vincentian is feeling the pain of what is happening. Governments across the world present possible solutions to the problem to alleviate the issues. And of course, we need to look at some of that. But these increases, we're not saying that they are man-made. They are just internal alone. the pressures are also external. But the interesting thing is, and I remember during the time, listen, these things come a long way. During the time when that was just around COVID time, when there was supply chain issues and the government were putting on some taxes, I think it was the custom, what I think called shilling. You had written about it. It was the custom duty tax that we had written about and asked them not to.
The 1%.
The 1%. The businesses came out and said that is going to carry up the prices of goods and services so high that we, the businesses, don't have a choice. We have to pass it on
to the consumer.
The union wrote the government and say, put a hold on this. It is going to create problems for the working class and for the citizens. And they refuse. These prices that you're experiencing now ain't just start now. They are being exacerbated now by what's happening now too. But they also started during that period of time because of decisions that were made. You notice even the issue with let's take a luxury good like a motor car. A motor car right now is out of the reach of many of the ordinary man or even the middle class man because of the increased taxes. These things don't just drop out of the sky. These things sometimes are dependent on government fiscal policies. The policies that government introduce and the decision they take during their budgetary process. This is what affects everything. And governments can mitigate these issues through that particular process. And sometimes their decisions and their actions puzzle me. I mean, I'm not an economist, but I think I know enough to ask, that don't make sense to me. You understand? So those to me, I mean, some of the issues. The basket of goods. And you are saying some people, your basket is different to mine. Now your basket is probably different to mine because me can't something that I can't buy what she's buying. Or she is probably like a higher end than I am. She's going to buy mutton and beef. Or you have to go back to the chicken back and thing. Can't afford the mutton and beef. $18 a pound. You understand? A pound of robin, and I saw that they have. I think their prices even in the basket of goods is erroneous too. A pound of robin used to be $5. It's $10 now. I hear this is 6 something. It's 6 something. And where you got a price it from? You go and try and buy a pound of robin. It's $10. These persons come around in their vehicles selling in the villages and things like that. I mean, I should go and buy $5 a pound, 2 pounds of that. And you realize it's telling you $10 a pound. And here the trick. If it's a big one of them, we tell you don't weigh 1.5 for that. Now it's your whole one, you don't reach a pound. So you're actually buying at least 2 big rabbit for $10. And can that feed your family? I mean, these are local things, right? Can that feed your family? The vegetables. And I'm wondering if the Ministry of Health is in an echo chamber. Are they being realistic with their objectives? Or are they operating in an echo chamber? So you say, eat healthy. I mean, I would very much love to eat healthy. You know, while in Colombia, you know, I took sick. And the funny thing is, all I had to eat, all I could have eaten then, quite ironically, is fruits and vegetables. And they were in abundance. Just eating fruits and vegetables. Now I realized eating so much fruits and vegetables, boy, that felt so good. That kind of like helping your recovery process and everything like that. So I came on now telling myself, boy, Wouldn't it be good to just continue eating fruits and vegetables? But I can't afford to eat fruits and vegetables like that all the time. The red apples imported that I used to buy. One time it used to be $16 for the bag, but imagine now I think it's 20 something dollars. I mean, the price of those things have gone up. Watermelon, oh my God, I used to buy that for my mother. I go to the supermarket the other day to buy, and I had to walk away. And I realized maybe after my mother passed, I decided to walk away because I used to buy it for her because she needed it. So regardless of the price, I used to just bang my belly and buy. But I walk away because I said I can't afford that. You're gonna eat, it makes sense you eat one slice per week. You understand what's the impact? You're talking about eat healthily. One slice per week. What's the impact on your body? These are things that you have to be eating regularly. Shall I talk about our the lifestyle diseases? And it requires us to eat differently. But there's a reason why obesity and lifestyle diseases are so prevalent in some countries. And this cost of living has an effect on all of that. Because you can't afford to buy the things that you need to eat. Even basic stuff like, I don't know what the price is for yams. I mean, I used to go in the supermarket, go in the market and buy a piece of yam because I like to cook my yam. I go in the other day. When they tell me how much a pound, it's a lot of money. What's the one that, let me see? And when they're done and you see the little thing, the yam you want to cook, when they wait, because I'm thinking they're heavy, right? When they don't wait, and you see the price, you spending all $15. So we tell you don't cut down 2-3 slices. That can't feed a family. I mean, that's me alone. So if I had a 3, 4, 5 member family, you understand? And those are some of the issues, those are some of the critical issues that people are facing. And we haven't even touched on the issue of cooking gas, whose price just keep going up and going up and going up. You don't have a choice. You have to buy the gas, right?
Not really.
Well, you're going to cook and cold.
Well, you have a choice.
Nobody cold price gone up, too.
No, I'm just saying, you say that a choice.
Well, you either cook on wood, and then you have to scrub the pot bottom on a regular basis, right?
Okay.
And people can say that is kind of out of the world. You don't cook on wood. But cooking gas prices, those are increasing. Tomatoes. And tomatoes seem to have the largest 62% change in price. But we don't import those, do we?
No.
Yeah, we do.
We do?
Mm-hmm. You don't see those that massy, those big ones or the very small ones.
Very expensive.
In August, according to the consumer price index for the government, in August, a pound of tomatoes was $7 a pound. In September, it's $11.41 a pound. And tomatoes are a staple thing for most families. You understand? Those are things that regularly people need. The elements from the basket that affect the ordinary person. So the person, your basket of goods where it revolves around these very basic carbs and vegetables and that sort of stuff. How do you manage at this particular time with an increase in cost of living? Because there's clearly an increase in inflation because the price of goods and services are moving. Yes, anyway, I'm talking enough. Sorry.
I just wanted to say a little bit on that point as it relates to the Ministry of Health and whether or not they'll they are in denial or they live in a bubble. I don't know. Well, I'm working on the health, but because ever so often you meet clients with certain chronic conditions, and the dietitians will do their part, you will do their part in terms of counseling and saying, okay, this is what you need to do. And the clients will listen. You're telling them, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. The client, you know very well, and they will tell you that too. Whatever you're asking me to do there, I simply cannot afford to do it. I simply cannot afford to eat it. So we say it every day. Okay, know your numbers, control your conditions. This is what you need to eat. Knowing fully well that the average person, whoever, cannot afford what you're asking them. So if you know that, so you may not have all the stats per se, but you have an idea that persons are not eating healthy because people simply cannot afford. So the if information is there. So when you're presenting these facts to whoever powers that be, this is what you listen. This is going to be more burden on the country than we anticipate or we bargain for. If we cannot get people to eat healthy, if we cannot get people to do this, we cannot get people to do that, it's going to backfire because the country going to have to pay more for healthcare for people who simply cannot afford. So they're gonna end up down at Milton Keto and becomes a burden to the state. And then all the taxes going to go up because the government simply cannot take care of them just like that. And then we're going to have to pay more. So it's like one
Domino effect.
yes. So if you don't you see it, why are we just operating as if it's business as usual?
So what are we gonna do?
Well, I guess we'll have some. We probably will get to some possible solutions.
Okay, just to draw some light on how the in terms of person's income and their distribution of income. I have some stats here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the 2024 stats, but I have some stats just to show a variation between 2021 to 2010. And I did get some, but not all, in respect of 2024. So we're looking at utilities. So we are looking at $100, right? We use that as an example. And we're going to see the breakdown of how that $100 was spent between 2021, 2010, and 2024. So for utilities, 12.77% was spent in 2001. By 2010, for that same utilities, 30.06% was spent on utilities. Unfortunately, oh yes, I actually have to 2024. So as of today, between 2010 and 2024, we are now seeing persons spending 42.9% of that $100 bill on utilities. So that is how the distribution goes.
That's a stark comparison.
Right. For utilities, for food now, in 2021, 53.6% was spent on food. By 2010, it dropped
You mean
to
2001?
2001.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, 2001. Right, 53.6%. By 2010, it dropped to 21.9%. And 2024, it dropped to 14.7%. So you see how the distribution of income is going. More money is going towards utilities, and people cannot afford to be eating properly. Or, well, I have to say properly because I want to assume that people are trying to eat at the best
Well,
possible.
they're not dying, so they're alive.
Right? So just between those two things, either you pay your bills or you eat. And most of that money goes towards spending, towards paying your bills, instead of eating healthy and surviving, basically.
Because
Right?
a lot of persons have children and other family members who depend solely on these services, especially the internet and all of that. So for parents, it would mean, okay, I have to, according to what people, bad my belly and pay Vilnec because I want my child to advance. And I'll have to just buy 1 pound less of chicken or fish and we share or whatever the case may be. But the light must stay over our head and the internet bill must pay. And that is the difficulty or the difficult position that persons find themselves in, where you're trying to figure out, or you're between a rock and a hard place. What do I do? I have all of this before me, my bills, my food bill, what do I do? What choice? And people just make decision based on what is there and their dependence and so forth, and they do whatever they have to do, or they pay half next time, and just so that to keep it over
and
their
I
head.
like the variation that you use in respect of living, like practicing healthy lifestyle and its impact on our healthcare system altogether. Because when me and you, all of us here were growing up, we could have simply gone out when our parents don't have money to give us for break, give us a banana or a mango or those little foods that were readily available. Now, the children, it's cheaper for parents to buy a snack than to provide 1 banana, 1 mango, some plum rolls. So even that tells you, because, well, majority of our Vincentian persons are in the low bracket, the low income bracket per se. So if we who are probably middle class are struggling just to make ends meet and to eat healthy, much less for those persons down there who have 2 and 3 and 4 children going to school, right? And might end up having to buy a 12 pack of Concours to say, okay, this, all of you will get from this. And that instead of buying fruits and vegetables, and it's cheaper to get them at $5 to say, okay, go and pick up a chicken and chips, So these are the things that we need to really look into when we talk about, salaries and minimum wage. How far does it really impact the person who really needs it? And how does it affect? It might not affect, as you say, the lower income persons the same way it affects the higher income persons who have it, like the allowances and so forth, as a backup plan to cover these additional costs that they might have. So we could probably venture out into what are some of the things where we talk about the impacts. What are some of the things that the government is doing to address?
Before we get there, because I think that is further down the road, we need to look at who are the people that are impacted. Because you raised it very much earlier, and you were saying, but I'm not impacted the same. But who or what are the people that are impacted?
Important.
The who, the people, the what, and you made a very important point, health. Right? So based on research and a lot of these things, because it happens to people across countries, people have done a lot of research on them to figure out how best to address them, right? So for example, a man who eats mainly wings, and I was saying a man who eats wings may be affected differently from one who is a vegetarian.
Right.
Ministry of Health, eating healthy. Being a vegetarian requires you to eat the more expensive because they're expensive. So cost of living inflation is going to impact him. His inflation or his high cost of living is different to yours, Nayoka, because you're eating chicken wings. So your preference, your meal preference indicates that you are impacted differently, right? Now, different people in different geographical locations impacted differently. The cost of goods in Bequia is a bit higher than the cost of goods on the mainland. And the cost of goods, like when they're dealing with gas, for example, LPG, they have different
For the zones.
different prices.
Mhm.
So people are impacted differently still based on where they are living. So some people experience higher inflation rates than others, and people, have changed based on what they see as the differences that is occurring to the prices in different areas. Price variations in some goods can significantly affect some consumers, while they do not affect those who do not consume such goods. So the poor man may be eating certain things, and the upper middle class, I would like to say not the middle class, the upper middle class or the rich eating something different. Their impact may be negligible, while the poor man or the lower salaried person have a more serious impact. The consequences of price hikes include decrease in purchasing power. Mayoka, you mentioned that very early. Reduced living standards, increased poverty, that's a given, and adverse effects on investment and employment. Household welfare negatively impacted, and business relying on important raw materials or energy were affected. So the inflation also affect businesses. How many businesses pass on their costs to the consumers? Poor households appear to suffer the most from rising food and energy prices. Poor households. We don't know what's the poverty level in St. Vincent. I think the last one I saw on one of those reputable sites is about 20-something%. So you could say, well, about 20-something% of the population suffer the most from these rising food and energy prices. But I think it's actually more than that. Poverty and inequality rates and the profiles of the poor based on household-specific inflation rates systematically differ from those based on the standard consumer price index approach. Accounting for the variability of inflation rates across household types might help policymakers, such as the government, design policies that better protect vulnerable households and protect economic growth. So when we look at what the government is doing, we look at what policies they are putting in place to mitigate the impact on the poor. Most people feel the effects of cost of living increases in their daily lives, but rising prices hit the middle class hard and the lower paid persons even harder. And I think our middle class is being wiped out. The last set of taxes, the lice and all of that was targeted at the middle class. And that has impacted the middle class quite greatly. Higher food, gasoline, and utility costs means less money for savings and less for discretionary spending. So you can't, you really can't go and say, yeah, a night out just to free your mind, eat some good food and drink some brandy. I mean, I shouldn't say that. The brandy part. Drink some soft wine, right? To compensate anyway, consumers buy less, switch to cheaper substitutes, and that's what you're saying with respect to the health people.
Mm-hmm.
They can't
Because
afford.
cheaper may not necessarily be better.
Cheaper may not be better. So they switch to the cheaper substitute and look harder for bargain gains or pull off major purchases. So healthcare is impacted. Healthcare costs continue to rise, straining people's budget and placing an additional burden on their wallets. Cost of health insurance premiums, we just saw that from the union side. The co-payments and the deductibles has gone up and increased quite significantly. And although we have the still the cheapest plan on the market, people were making noise because all of these things were affected just last year. And those effects come about as a result of inflation and other issues, making healthcare less accessible for many individuals and families. Unexpected medical expenses can quickly deplete savings and leave people vulnerable to financial hardship. Essential goods are affected by all of these high costs. Essential goods that people need to use on an everyday basis. Fuel, I saw somebody write an article about VINLEC and the fuel surcharge. I can't remember how to describe it as pure wickedness, because it is crippling. It is crippling. And later on, I'm sure when we look at what government can do to mitigate, that will come up. Some of the other persons that are most affected, stagnant wages and income disparity. Because of as these inflation and cost of living prices are increasing, your wage being stagnant is not moving. In some countries, there's a cost of living adjustment every year. So like in England and those bigger developed nations. So they give a cost of living adjustment. So your salary adjusts with the inflation rates. We have stagnant wages here, and as you rightly say, the lowest within the OECS. And being stagnant, it is depressed by the increased cost of living. They're moving. The cost of living moving, and that just they're the same place. That's a problem. So the impact on people's wallets, reduce disposable income, increase debt, because people now going to borrow more to survive. So they have more loans. You put yourself deeper in problem, but you're trying to figure something out just to survive. There are people who have loans here, there, and everywhere, and they're stretched so thin. And they're only doing it to meet what is happening. You understand? That creates a lot of stress on people, which results in health issues. The retirement savings, the people who have retired, and in particular for us in St. Vincent, the people on NIS pension who ain't get an increase in the last 10 to 14 years. You can imagine the impact of this cost of living on them. Not this one here. They accumulated one from all the way back then. And they have one pension with a moving 10 to 14 years. That is the height of wickedness. Because it is cost of living up and cost of living up and cost of living. And their stagnant pension remain the same. And for the love of me, I don't understand. We keep asking the government, do something about it. Nothing is being done about it. And about 80% or more of the people who are on NIS pension only get one pension, which is NIS pension. How are they surviving? And many of them have said they are surviving because they have the children who are giving them some assistance. But that's a stagnant pension, that ain't moving. And the cost of living just beating that down to nothing. So those who get $200 or $300 a fortnight, and you were just giving this Rita the relationship between the years gone by, how much they used to spend on food, and that is dwindling. And at the end of the month, you have to hire a fridge on, so your light bill ain't going below $100. I see someone I know who is living in a house, and there's a struggle to maintain your light bill and buy food. And they actually you have to stagger putting your fridge on and keeping it off, just to try and keep your light bill below $100. You have to do that. That's what they're actually doing. And that's the kind of situation that Vincentians find themselves in from time to time. Those who are at the poverty level. The stress and mental health impact. The stress knowing that you cannot maintain your family. The things that you used to buy for your children, you can't anymore. Everything has to cut back. You go to the grocery store, then the child say that they need ice cream. Maybe last month you could have bought that, but now you can't, because when you look at it, you have to go pay a light bill. You have to pay a water bill as a must.
Go river.
Yeah, I put a little credit on your phone. Anybody could exist without communication now. And those are stressful situations. So I'm done with that.
Before we move on, I was discussing with a colleague um, about, of course, the cost of living here and that. St. Vincent is too small of an island to be relying so heavily on imports for food and fuel and manufactured products, right? And we can see that it's bleeding onto our local produce as well, like what Shellyan said.
Why are they too
So
small to rely on those
we
things?
are too small to be relying so heavily, not just to rely on, but so heavily on imports.
Where's our fuel gonna come from? Where's the energy supply gonna come from?
Okay, food. You forget I said that.
But it's a fuel and energy.
Yes, of course, and manufactured products. So that's 2 out of 3.
Right.
Let's just let's leave out the fuel. Food, manufactured products.
Right.
And it's bleeding onto our local produce as well. This is what we were discussing.
What can we do different about that?
Not just that, but who's regulating those prices? So can anybody now come in the market and say, okay, so $20 per pound a tomato? Who's responsible?
So the local produce can be regulated.
By whom?
By the government. No, the local produce, but the small islands import most of their food.
Remember the bulk buying too and too.
Huh?
Remember the bulk buying as well.
They import most of their food. So it's like you can't escape the inevitable. Most of your food are imported. And because your food is imported, you're exposed to
global inflation, of course.
The inflation, exchange rates, whatever it is, that have an impact. Like, like in COVID time, that was the supply chain issue that kept on prices. The prices of even, not just food alone, building materials that skyrocketed. And they're still there.
What specific ministry is responsible for regulating local produce and the prices? What stops them from saying $30 for this now, just because everything rising?
Right. So the point that you're asking there, as let's get into what the government has done and what they can do. One of the suggestions that was made by the Prime Minister is,
but for a while we have been calling for that.
For what the
price control and the law
is a law to address the issue of price gouging and price control. One of the things with price control is that you will say in a free and open market, you really shouldn't have. The market forces supposed to determine the cost of goods and services. That's the type of market that we are in, right? What is the mechanism that government can use? And I hear they say that they're going to introduce what mechanism can they use to control prices or to stop price gouging? Do they have the staff? So there's a lot of questions. I hear the conversation, but he hasn't said, flesh it out. How is it going to happen? And when is it going to happen?
Might come out in the budget.
I doubt that.
It might come out in the budget. But for the gentleman who called earlier and asked what the role of the union and what we intend to do, I think you would have mentioned that before. By the nature of the organization and the fact that we advocate for the working class. So that's what we are doing here tonight in terms of giving people the information, letting persons know what is happening, advocating for persons to have better wages, which we have been doing. And even when we do our collective bargaining agreement, all of this would be included because you have the facts that, okay, yes, inflation is up. We have certain amount of persons who are living below the standard, and therefore you can make your recommendation to the government. You can lobby for your workers to say, well, listen, these are the facts. It is clear that persons can no longer live like this, can no longer afford to buy food, and therefore we are recommending. I don't know if we will ever get to like Europe and so forth, where we're leveling it off or breaking even in terms of when they carry up and they carry up our salaries. We may not get there, but the union is responsible to make sure that they continue to lobby for the workers so that they can get um, better wages, hopefully, and they can increase or improve, I should say, their standard of living. So it may sound to a lot of persons that we, like Mr. Hamilton, that we're just talking, but we're not just talking. We're trying to sensitize you. We're giving you the information so that when the time comes, you can make an informed decision as to what you want to do or the way forward.
Right, and that is where our collective bargaining comes into play, and that is why it is so important. And that is one of the difficulties that we are having
To get government
to
to sit
get
down and have
an
that discussion.
agreement that protects civil servants. The private sector, I think, is more embracing of having the unions involved with their employees, because they see the benefits of the union being the middleman between them and the employees, and what collective bargaining and the agreement brings to the business altogether. But what I do not understand, though, is the way in which our businesses operate when workers are given an increase. It seems like this is an opportunity for us to carry up prices.
Yeah.
So when the workers feel, okay, this is a little leeway for us to start saving a little on the side and, making some kind of progress or move a little, further ahead of where we are, that little increase is being taken back in increased taxes, by increased prices by the businesses. So the standard of living remains the same, or even people that find themselves going even deeper into poverty, because who monitors these changes in prices and so forth. So this is where we are. So what is the government doing to address these sort of situations that workers face when we get a little salary increase and when we see inflation? What
Well, I think Brother Bosch would have started the
borrowing with
ball
that?
rolling when he mentioned the PM and what they said they intend to do in terms of bringing the legislation
In the price gouging?
into play. But what they failed to mention, maybe it will come out in the budget. Let's see, is how exactly they plan to do it. Because to say it is one thing, but is to say to the persons, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put that in place, that in place. This person will be responsible for that. That department will do that. And if it's not properly sorted or properly discussed or looked at or laid out, we're going to probably find ourselves at the same spot or in further problems. It must be spelled out properly so that persons would know and that all would benefit. Because the government is famous to say, we're going to put this in place, we're going to put that in place, and when it comes to them actually adhering to what they themselves put in place,
Just on the books, yeah.
It's usually a problem. And if it's really going to be enforced, because sometimes you find organizations or businesses, there's an increase, but they have old stocks that was never a part of this new increase, but you find them selling it for the same price. Oh, it's the government, and it's easy for say, oh, it's the government, it's customs. Who knows that? Who is checking?
And we are going to see a lot of that next month.
Well, that is true.
Yeah, so we definitely need to see some sort of action in addressing. I mean, we could only do our part. Yes, we advocate for salary increase, but what comes after that, the taxes and so forth that increase, and the other, you know, other charges that we see, because we had some additional charge, I think, that were introduced just this year, I think, in respect of persons who were building houses and some electrical, paying for the applications and so forth. So even though in one sense you might see that yes, the union actually got an increase for the workers, but within that same year you see all these additional things
It doesn't make any
being
sense.
being applied.
Well, I'll tell you what, and this is the we talk about government fiscal policy. So government introduce fiscal policies to maybe help reduce the inflation or to address the issue of cost of living. But what is mind-boggling? You could reduce taxes is a policy that works by putting more money in workers' hands so that they can meet the extra cost. Right? You reduce taxes. So we had a tax reduction the last time. So the concept is a good one. You're reducing taxes, giving people more money in their pocket. They can save more, those at the top. Those at the bottom will spend because it's an opportunity now to buy what they couldn't buy before. And it allowed them to have a cushion with respect to the increased cost of living. But when you decrease taxes, which is a fiscal measure to put more money in your hand, more spending, increase your spending power. And on the other hand, you do the opposite. You increase certain taxes.
Yes.
It's mind-boggling.
So you decrease
Say, give
the
it one hand and
income
then-
tax.
It's two sides of, it's two
And you-
opposite type of actions that, as far as I have researched and read, I have not seen where those two things come together
And it's in 1 year.
in 1 year. Two different types. So what are they? What message are they sending? What sort of policies are they putting on the table? What's their fiscal policy? It doesn't make sense to me. The last time we got 2% increase. Union negotiated the 2%. We negotiated some tax decreases. This inflation would have been dealt with because you had an extra $50, $60 in your pocket to deal with the increase in upon a rabbin or something. The government also gone ahead, correctly so, and they increased the minimum wage. All our fiscal policies, given the right intention to put more spending power in people's hands. That's what it's supposed to do. They go ahead now in the same vein, but this middle class, particularly first, and they increase license. They increase some the vehicle insurance. No, these are targeted at the middle class. And there's an increase in social tax. You know what the social tax is? NIS. All of those three things work against the first one.
Tried to do.
It's madness. But that's what they did. So when you hear people feeling the pinch now, it is no secret. It's not a secret what they were doing. Mamagaing people because people think, oh my gosh,
You're
yes.
getting
They
something when you're
think,
not.
but in reality, they knew exactly what they were doing. It's really taking people for fools. At least you could have waited till another year and see how the economy is and see how inflation is and decide you're going to increase these taxes. But you did it the very same year. So people end up, I see a young lady friend of mine on Facebook was talking about what she ended up with when she do all of her calculations, and she's a graduate teacher. It's literally nothing.
Yeah.
So that's why I say the middle class is being wiped out by their fiscal policies. That's a fact. It's there for all to see. Just as to look at what their policies are, it's there for everybody to see. Now, the other thing is, and the solutions we're talking about here, you see this price gouging? I have much faith in that. That is extremely challenging to put in effect because it requires labor force to enforce it. Can't be labor department. If it's, then you have to staff them with even more people, right? So I don't have much faith in that. All of these increases in goods and services resulted in an increase in government revenue. That's happening since COVID, you know? And people have to understand, when prices go sky high, it ain't just the merchants them who go and benefit because they're passing on the cost, you know? The government coffers benefit. The increase in all of these prices means the government collects more VAT. If you paid VAT on $100 and the thing is now $150, you're paying VAT on $150. So the government revenue increases while the poor people's spending power decrease. That is the reality. Now, what government could have done? Because they are making more. A suggestion was made by, say, the opposition to reduce VAT. Reducing VAT would touch every single person in the country because every single person goes to the supermarket to spend. That's so?
Mm-hmm. Yes, but
it will touch every
we had actually put that forward
person.
When we were looking at
when we make our first proposal, we talk about reducing the VAT by a certain percentage. It's going to affect every single person in a positive way. Don't touch my revenue. I mean, that's me saying what they're saying. The higher the prices, the more money I can rake in as a government.
What about price capping? Can they cap the price on some items?
They can cap the prices on some items. I think there was a time when the price of sugar, I think, was capped. That was controlled by, well, it wasn't the marketing board. There was the place, the
essential goods,
agricultural outputs, something.
Yeah, because certain especially the chicken wings and so forth, that you find the low income persons might be able to stretch a little further in respect of.
How do you cap that? When the merchant brings it in and the cost, their input cost has gone up, you see? Everything comes from customs, come right down. When we talk about a 1% that went on and we talk about the impact it is going to have on business, people warn the government about the impact. They don't really care about that. All of that comes right down. So how can you cap it when they themselves are facing increased costs in importation and increased costs at the customs? Those are the problems. It's a whole domino effect of a series of issues that are occurring. And the people who are facing the brunt of it are the middle income people, as the research show, and the poor people. Not the politicians who are in government or out of government but holding office. Not necessarily them, because their salaries are such that this doesn't matter to them. It is the poor people and the middle class who are feeling the brunt of what is happening. It's the poor people and the middle class who are being toyed with in this regard.
So in respect of the telecommunication networks that we have,
But they
here,
increased theirs too, right?
right? So
Did the pricing go up the other day?
Yeah.
and they don't have a good service.
so, and that is something now that you find most every household, because your children now
Yeah.
rely so heavily on the
On the
use of the internet and so forth to do research and so forth. So where can the control come into play in respect of those services, because those are part of the utilities too?
But this is a
They
cry
can't-
that has been out there for quite some
But they
time
can't
in
increase
terms
unless
of.
they are allowed to increase.
But that is the
That's
thing.
it. So
If
Yeah,
they
have
can't
to
think, so they just increase, so which means they
Right.
were allowed to do it.
Yes.
And this has been the
Yes.
cry for a lot of us for quite some time in terms of the increase that they had before this and then now again. So
And-
if you know you're pushing, they're the ones who pushing education revolution and saying, okay, they want every household to have a university graduate by such and such. Everybody needs the internet, but maybe everybody won't be able to soon afford the internet.
yeah.
Why then you know that and you're giving an allowance in the increase in prices? And sometimes too, a lot of us we hear things, we hear because we're not deaf, and we figure that we're getting something, but we don't take the time to actually analyze that you're getting it with one hand, and it's actually being taken away from you with the other hand.
Yeah, those are some of the
Yeah,
problems.
because we talk about utilities on our last program. We talk about the budget speech, and where the Prime Minister once again mentioned the VINLEC, the liquor break, which did not move. Sorry to say that it remained the same from the previous year. So we were wondering why it was brought forward again. Even that sense, we talked about give the release on the VAT or the fuel surcharge.
And to the people who really, really need it,
right?
which is the
Which
persons
would
at the bottom of the
really
ladder.
exactly would be more impactful on people's pockets than that, the usage. I can't remember what it
At the
was.
end of the day, people rightfully don't really want to hear all of the big terminologies and all of the big
Yeah.
talks and all of
Yeah.
that. They want to know how I'll be able to buy food tomorrow, or if I'll be
Exactly.
able to buy food tomorrow. That is what matters to them. So whether you're billing big jetty, small jetty, whatever it
Doesn't
is,
matter.
That's right.
they really business. All they want to know is to be able to survive and to feed their families.
And
So tell me, how am I going to be able to make it in the next 5-6 months?
okay, and that is why you might say forces now looking at the public assistance as a means to an end.
Well,
That
because
everybody-
right now
everybody
they probably
fighting
had no other
to-
choice, and more going to go on.
Yeah.
The list, the rate as what we're going, more will be added to the list.
Because they increase poverty.
Yeah, because that seems to be the other alternative, other than okay, you can't create jobs, and you have all these persons who are like below the poverty line. The easiest thing to do is to say, okay, let us put them on the
And
public assistance list.
okay, so put them on the list, and your bill starts to go up, and you figure, okay,
Yeah.
well, I can't pay out all of these social monies. I have to find a way to get
Yeah,
the
taxes again.
taxpayers
And the
to
tax,
pay.
And the tax, right, and increase taxes.
So the persons out there not working, getting a free money, but it's not really free, because all of us will be paying.
Some of the things government have during independence speech, I think he introduced some measures. I don't know if they were geared towards meeting this inflationary cost or cost of living, but he mentioned some vulnerable persons who they're going to increase some payments. And so that's a good measure, because the cost of living is impacting the most vulnerable. So increasing
If they're really vulnerable.
well, I don't know. Increasing the poor relief, increasing the monies on the set program. Those are good initiatives that will help to mitigate the increase
But they're like
in prices,
to me, just like
right?
short-term
Doesn't
fix.
touch the entire country.
Mhm.
Doesn't touch the entire country. The suggestion by the opposition to reduce VAT will touch the entire country.
And probably
So
be
that-
more sustainable over the
Right,
years.
and will be more sustainable. in that regard. Maybe the money that you give in the nurses will help to mitigate that too. I'll again an extra.
Leave it
Yeah,
alone. Little
right.
bit
You know
now.
what I'm saying? It's a good if it probably wasn't intended in this particular way, but it can also help in mitigating these costs. But here are some recommendations. Yeah, no, you run the stuff on the back. Here are some recommendations, right, to mitigate this increased cost of living. And we have said it here on this program before. Remove VAT entirely from electricity. Remove VAT from. One time the gentleman at Vinlex say it's a small amount. Well, the salary increase some people get is a small amount too. So every little thing add up. Remove VAT from electricity. Okay, we are already paying too much with the fuel surcharge and everything like that. Just take off the VAT. Provide a COLA adjustment from time to time. Cost living adjustment. Outside of your salary increase, provide a cost living adjustment. It's one of the ways that you will help to meet these increases, right? The different social benefits and income support measures. Government has been doing some good work in this particular area to help household cope with the increase in prices. Continue to do that. The price policy that they have mentioned, which is price gouging, or look at the possibility of capping certain prices of goods within the basket that are critical or essential for the majority of the vulnerable persons. Those can be looked at as possibilities also. You must have strong collective bargain. Make provision and accommodate strong collective bargain so that unions can work towards negotiating benefits for workers to mitigate the increase in cost of living. There's no collective bargaining in any public service. Government don't want to bargain. And it's a labor government. It's a crying shame. So that is important. Okay, we must be able to negotiate a fair sharing of the cost of living crisis where we can address those things with higher wages and allowances. The allowances we ain't touching 20 years. Must be able to negotiate all of those things. Okay, the social safety benefits, you upgrade those. That is the pension that some of the persons on NIS who have not got an increase in some 10 to 14 years. Address those. Those need to be looked at. Lower income earners are disproportionately bearing the brunt of cost of living crisis. They spend a higher share of the income on basic goods such as energy and food. As a result, efforts to make social benefits poverty resilient are particularly important. Trade unions have an important role to play in pushing government to strengthen social benefits. So we have to play our role also in helping to mitigate the cost of living crisis. And according to the International Monetary Fund, workers need to join the trade union to have a good trade union density that will empower the trade unions, give them the capacity, empower them to negotiate and give them a greater bargaining power in redistributing income equally. And another important thing is the corporate tax. Government have been reducing corporate taxes over the years. What benefit has that been to the country, one, and to workers? And that is something that they need to look at, because all of these increased prices, the corporate society are reaping bountiful profits. Maybe it was necessary to reduce taxes. It probably wasn't necessary. So they have their corporate, some businesses that are reaping plenty profits because of all of these high increases. And maybe you need to look at that again. Increase productivity, that is important. Okay, and I don't know if that is something that is ever talked about, but there has to be, government needs to look at increased productivity and increase production of whatever we make here, which we don't make anything, but we have these some fruits and vegetables, bananas and that sort of stuff. So those prices need to go down because we are producing them. And sometimes they are produced in abundance and the prices are still high.
It's quite interesting that we have, we would normally export goods to Trinidad, to Barbados. And those same persons would buy our goods and make things, and then we buy the manufactured product from them. Why is it that we cannot produce it ourselves? It just behind me, like we sell the raw product to them and they just make something and we import them and we keep carrying up our import bill. But we have the product we produce right here where we can we can make this stuff. Why can't we? And then that is going to increase employment because you have a lot of manufacturers, manufacturing plants. I don't know. It's just strange.
And you can also slash income tax and lower taxes on electricity, which I don't think. Well, we say remove VAT. Lower taxes on fuel and thing. And last time during COVID, I think they had given a subsidy on that, where they had reduced the tax on fuel, thus reducing the cost. And that is one way, of course, of doing that. The opposition, their suggestions are VAT-free shopping days. I don't know how that is going to work. Okay. Bonus for public sector workers. Well, I love that one. And the government of St. Vincent and the Great need to consider that. We have to mention that when we go to the meeting. Shellen and Desiree and
I think persons were actually looking for bonus this year.
Yeah.
Every year they're looking for bonus.
So a bonus for public sector workers for Christmas. That will be the icing on the cake. Yeah. And as they mentioned, extra payments for those on public assistance. The government have been increasing public assistance over a period of time. So they need to continue that. And one of the most important things, of course, that is going to touch every single worker in the country and every single person in the country is a reduction in the VAT. You're not going to lose anything because the prices are already high. Your revenue is going to be up there still because you're making a lot from the increased prices. So those are some of the suggestions or recommendations that we think government should give some consideration to.
Okay, so we are actually on the top of the hour. I don't know if we have any extra time for persons to give their closing remarks. So if anybody feels like...
Just in closing, I think we would have enlightened persons in terms of what the issues are, what the facts are. You can also do your own research if you think that we are telling you something that is not true. The information is there, but the issues are there and persons are struggling, and we know that a lot of persons are struggling here in St. Vincent and Grenadines and having it really difficult to meet their needs on a daily basis. And I really hope that the government will look into a lot of the as when we meet and we have our deliberation, they would really look into putting things in place to relieve the suffering from the lower class persons who are actually the majority of persons here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that is our hope. Okay. That's our union.
Okay, Nayoka, are you good? Okay, so ladies and gents and everyone who has been listening to our PSU Speaks program, thank you once again for being a part of our discussion, those who called in. And next week, we'll be having another program which would be taken by our Women's Committee in recognition of International Day to End Violence Against Women and Girls. So next week would be a very informative discussion as well. And of course, the PSU Women's Committee would be having its annual Women's Retreat on November the 30th. Registration forms are available at the union, and it's only $25, and that gives you a T-shirt and, of course, a day filled with very professional lectures and interaction with your sisters. So please come on board with us and be a part of our women's retreat this year.
And next week we have our program again, and the women will be taking that one because I think that's part of the
Yes. Thank you,
thing.
Mr.
Yeah.
President, for
You really
reiterating
dropped it a little bit, boy.
Yes.
Yeah,
So come on
next
board
She did say.
next week and join us when a woman would be taking on
I didn't hear, sorry.
our discussions.
My
So
bad.
good night and
Good night. You really dropped it,
No,
boy.
see you listening audience
Sorry,
next
my
week.
bad.
Bye
My
bye.
bad. So me,
Wake up,
Stacey.
The protection of workers' rights is critical to the development of any country. Workers are the driving force behind any economy. The Public Service Union presents PSU